All right. Well, welcome to the Virginia Farm to School Toolkit webinar series. This is a collaboration of Virginia Cooperative Extension and the Virginia Department of Education School Nutrition Programs. I am Stuart Vermack. I'm a food safety extension agent based up in Loudoun County, Virginia, and I'm the co-lead for the VCE Farm to School program team. This webinar series is designed to support and explain each chapter of the Virginia Farm to School Toolkit, which was developed to guide VCE extension agents, school division administrators, school nutrition professionals, educators, school garden coordinators, and others towards using farm to school practices as a means to increase equitable access to fresh, healthy, Virginia-grown food while providing hands-on learning opportunities in a variety of educational settings. Today's webinar is entitled Procuring Safe Food, Assessing Risk, and Documenting Practices, and it's based on Chapter 5 of the Virginia Farm to School Toolkit. Since navigating farm to school food safety can be confusing to know where to start, what questions to ask, who needs to be asked, and where to find reliable resources, we wanted to emphasize some basic principles about food safety and resources to help guide you through that process. Today, we are joined by my colleagues, Amber Valentin, who's an extension specialist in on-farm food safety, and she is my co-lead with the Farm to School program team, and Lester Schoenberger, associate extension specialist in food safety and co-lead of the food safety program team. Thank you all so much for joining us. So Amber's going to begin by sharing key insights about food safety from the toolkit, her experience with growers, and some related educational resources. And then Lester will share about some additional Virginia Cooperative Extension food safety resources to check out. As our panelists share, we encourage you to add any questions to the chat box so that we can have our panelists share their perspective once they present their slides. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amber.
Thanks, Stuart. It is really great to be here and to share something that I'm passionate about. Please keep in mind that I could spend an entire day on all of this, if not more time, but I'm limited to a brief overview, so I will try to share what I think are the most important ideas. Okay, so we're going to start by considering what I like to refer to as the flow of food from farm to school. In this simplified figure, we have different types of farms on the left side of the figure. We have produce, we have grain, we have crops and animals and fish. At this stage, we can recognize that there are always going to be associated risks and hazards that are specific to what's being produced. So if it's animals, that obviously is going to look a lot different than if we were looking at fish. And so we really need to be mindful of that. Once the products leave the farm, then they may be either used as raw agricultural products or they may undergo further processing. So what I mean by that, a great example might be tomatoes, where we might use those tomatoes in a fresh salad. So that would be a raw agricultural product. Or we might want to make that, use those tomatoes for tomato sauce. So again, in both of those cases, there are unique risks that are specific to whether those products are handled as raw products or if they're further processed. Once those raw products are there, we may either deliver them directly to the farm, to the school, as we can see in that top picture, or they may be sold through an aggregator and distribution facility, which then distributes that product to the school division. Processed products would also be distributed to the school division. Regardless of the steps for how those products are delivered, there are potential risks during the storage and transportation stages. So we can think about different things of how that product's held, what the truck conditions might look like, how that product gets moved, the cooling, the temperature holding, all that kind of thing can have an impact and pose risk. If the school garden or land lab is also growing food, that food is used by the school, there are associated risks just like there would be on the farm. Further, once those products are received at the schools, there are also handling risks that are related to the handling or the storage, the holding, and the use of those products. Next slide. So as I said earlier, this is a simplified flow, but it does provide a few key points that I want to emphasize. Regardless of the type of food, every food has specific risks that are associated with it. So it's really critical to know what that food is like. If we're looking at fish versus grains versus beef or pork or produce, they each have specific risk that they can become contaminated, and we need to know what that is. Also, the other really big point I want to make is that if we think along this continuum where we're looking at the farm going to the school and all the steps in between, there are food safety risks or hazards that are really important to identify, and then practices that we need to think about that can mitigate those risks. And so this brings us to the school side of things. It's really important to know that each type of food has those different food safety regulations and handling requirements. Guiding growers then should always start with what each school or school's division's criteria is. While there are basic guidelines that are set forth federally and statewide, the specifics at individual schools and school divisions may differ since there is not a one size that fits all. Further, from school to school and division to division, it's important to recognize that there are varying capacities in terms of the staffing, in terms of the equipment, the facilities, and the distribution. Some schools do a lot of scratch cooking. Other schools may actually have a central kitchen and the food is brought there and just simply needs to be heated up. So again, there's going to be a lot of differences in how each of those scenarios might look in terms of food safety risk. The other thing is to really think about, and I always like to say this, that it's really critical to develop and foster good working relationships with a school nutrition director, since they'll really know how to handle these specific food safety questions. It's critical that that discussion and that communication happens, because each school, like I said, is going to be different, and what they're dealing with is critical. So we kind of have these two different directions going on. We have coming from the farm to the school, but we also have the school and how those two interface. And so again, that's something that I really want to emphasize. Next slide. So when we look at this, I was trying to think of the best way to kind of demonstrate how to look at different food safety requirements. So I kind of came up with what I call a simplified way. I don't know how simple it is, but we have these federal and state food safety requirements. So this would be what USDA may dictate and other food regulations that are out there. We also have the state food safety requirements, which would be things like the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. We have the Virginia Department of Education and what they may dictate in terms of how they like things to be handled. Then we also have what that school division food safety criteria is. So what I want to say, that's not in conflict with what these other requirements might be, but given that every school can be different and what they're trying to work with, they may have their own food safety criteria also that we're dealing with. And then from the farm side, we're thinking about, okay, well, what's the type of food that's being produced or raised? Is it fish? That's going to fall under certain kinds of food safety ways of handling and producing that food. If we're looking at fresh produce, that's going to look different as well. Are we looking at raw or processed foods? So is that tomato going to be used as a raw commodity, or is that tomato going to be processed into something else? And then we have to think about those delivery and distribution channels. One thing I always like to remind folks of is that it's important to consider that that delivery and distribution channel, like an aggregator, can oftentimes really help from the farm side to get to the school. They may provide things that the farmer themselves may not have access to, so such as their storage, their transportation. So again, understanding how you're going to get that product to the school is really critical in terms of understanding what might need to be met. If you're going through an aggregator, oftentimes they may have stiffer requirements in terms of food safety, so knowing what that is really important. Next slide. So I want to kind of to hone in a little bit on the different kinds of food, and I'm kind of dividing it between produce and non-produce. We know that schools try to use a lot of fresh produce. It's definitely something that is talked about a lot, but when we think about the overall produce, it's important to consider that all schools do incorporate best food safety practices in terms of their handling, their training, and how they want things done. And that's important for farms to be aware of as they're bringing it. When we think about the farm level, for produce items, it's really important in Virginia. Virginia Department of Education does not require that a farm must be GAP certified, and I'll mention what that means in a second here, nor does the USDA. So there's no requirement, a federal or state requirement that that farm needs to be GAP certified. Certification is basically a voluntary program that a farm can undertake to show that they've identified these risks that I've mentioned, that they're incorporating best practices to mitigate those risks, and they're documenting, keeping really good records, and they have essentially a plan, a food safety plan that helps them to do that. So, like I said, for produce, this is not a requirement, but it is important to know that some school divisions do require GAP certification. And this is especially true when we consider something like a food service management company. So this would be an organization, for example, like Sodexo or Airmark. These are folks that are that basically, in place of having a staff that is hired by the school, they're typically an outside organization. And so they are typically a lot more stiffer in their requirements of what they will and won't accept from growers in terms of fresh produce. So again, regardless of whether or not that grower needs to be GAP certified or not, one thing I always really encourage growers is to say that you need to know what your risks are at your production, harvest, and post-harvest handling stages. And once you identify what those potential risks are, then you need to implement good agricultural practice to mitigate that. Next slide. Now, when we're looking at non-produce, one thing to really keep in mind is that so many of these items are definitely under specific federal and state processing regulations. And so, your average farmer is going to know that if I'm growing beef, I'm going to have to take it to a USDA facility if I'm going to sell that as a commercial product. And those facilities are typically, they have a verification process that they would go through. We would see the same thing with pork. If I was taking milk, then that is also under certain standards, and any processing requirements that might be there are also going to be met. The other big thing is that non-produce items would have what we've referred to as time temperature control standards and handling requirements. So again, what is the most optimal temperature when I'm handling that product? If I'm transferring it from that processor to a school, there's very, very specific standards that need to be followed to make sure that it's held at an appropriate temperature so that it does not become a food safety hazard if somebody eats it. Adhering to these guidelines is really critical at all stages of production, harvest, and post-harvest handling, processing, and transportation. So again, think about that flow of food and all the steps along the way. And whether it's produce or non-produce, it's really critical that from the farm side of things and the aggregator, that it's being handled in a good way. Next. So another really important thing is, and this is often a question that school nutrition directors will ask, is how can they verify how a farm is actually doing their food safety? What is their food safety plan? How are they actually carrying it out? So sometimes this may be as simple as a verbal or written agreement from the farm or the distributor. It may entail a farm visit or a tour. It could be having that food safety plan that has their basic standard operating procedures and their records showing how they're actually conducting things. If they have GAP certification, it would be their manual. It would also be their certificate. But I think most people would also want to see how they're actually handling that product. or if they're growing something else, they would have other documentation. The conveyance records would be like when it was actually delivered, how it was conveyed from the farm to that delivery or transportation or aggregator, and then was that temperature maintained, and other important food safety practices that would try to reduce the risk for contamination. Whatever it is, it's really important that that's communicated, and it's really important that food safety authority, which would be the school nutrition director or whoever else it may be, the food service management company, is going to want to know what is going on and being able to verify that practice. One thing I will say, this can be a real challenge. If you're a school nutrition director, obviously there's a lot of time that you do not have to actually visit a farm, see what they're doing. So this is where the farm side of things and where Extension working with farmers can really help to kind of bridge that gap, no pun intended, but to really be able to help with that grower to convey what they are really doing, because that's really critical. That whole communication, I can't emphasize that enough. In all the food safety work I do and have done, that communication between the producer and the market, in this case it's the school, is really, really critical, just to be able to show what that person is doing. Next slide. So if you want to look more at this, there's so many great resources that are out there. I will kind of share some that we've used here. And one or some of these publications deal more from the side of considerations for school nutrition directors. And then the other one would be for if I was a producer wanting to access schools. These publications were written by myself and some other colleagues a few years ago. They are based on both the school nutrition side of things as well as the farm side. So I think you may find these really helpful if you're working with growers and you want to help them, or if you're really interested in getting more into farm to school. We also have this fact sheet, assessing on-farm risk, which is a really simple fact sheet, just kind of explaining, okay, what are the different kinds of risks we're referring to, the chemical, biological, and physical kinds of contaminants. How do we actually, how do those risks actually occur on the farm? And what are some practical things that I can do to mitigate those risks? So encourage you to kind of consider those. Next, please. For those who may need to be GAP certified because the school requires that, I wanted to really mention Extension does provide one-on-one assistance. We've been doing the mentoring process for a long time now, and I found that that is the best way to teach growers, is getting out in the field with them. We have Extension agents who are trained in this, and we work together to basically provide an on-farm hazard assessment. So we basically go to the farm, look at what those different risks might be based on their situation. So for example, if I was growing lettuce in a greenhouse, that's going to look a lot different than growing lettuce in the field. Or if I was growing tomatoes in a field situation versus growing them in a high tunnel, say, that's going to look different. But there's some basics that we know in terms of the categories. So we help the farmer to assess what those things are. Then we also help them come up with how they're going to mitigate those risks with different practices. Again, this is regardless of whether, well, in this case, it would be GAP certification, but we can also help growers even without the GAP certification piece. If they are becoming GAP certified, we would also help them create a food safety plan. We have templates that are USDA-based GAP audits and the harmonized GAPs that we can help them with. We also will then conduct a mock audit walkthrough just prior to when that audit takes place with the inspectors. So it really gives them that assistance. We've had 100% success rate with, you know, dozens and dozens of growers who have gone through this process. So if that's something that you want to work with us on, we are more than happy to provide that assistance to you. I also wanted to just mention assessing on-farm risks fact sheet series that we produced last year. You can find that on the Extension website, and it's a really nice series that really dives deeper into the whole GAP certification process, takes you from the production to the harvest to the post-harvest handling steps, and then also just the actual process of what GAP certification looks like. We've also created GAP videos that are soon to be released that basically walk through those same fact sheets. We also have a website, the Virginia Fresh Produce Food Safety website, which is a great resource. It is being revamped, so it should be, it is live now, but you can also expect to see a new edition of it that's going to really be robust and have a lot of great things there that can help with growers and consumers in terms of food safety. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Lester Schoenberger. I'm an Associate Extension Specialist in the Department of Food Science and Technology, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get to share a little bit this afternoon, or whenever you might view the recording, about some of the resources that we have that can support food safety and the farm to school continuum. So for those who might be a little bit unfamiliar with Extension, I always like to give just a little bit of a primer. So our work within Virginia Cooperative Extension is to transfer the expertise that exists at Virginia Tech and at Virginia State University and apply that within Virginia's communities. And so we are a team of faculty specialists, of regional and local agents, of program assistants and volunteers to do that. And Cooperative Extension exists as a partnership between local, state, and federal governments. And if you take anything from my portion of the presentation this afternoon, it is my strong recommendation that you develop relationships with your local extension agents. They are the ones who know about much of the programs that we are offering through Virginia Tech and through Virginia State. They know how to connect you with many of us as faculty specialists, or they can help you themselves as well. And so this is just a map showing that Extension has presence all across Virginia. And if you go to the Cooperative Extension website, you should be able to locate the contact information for your local office. So in terms of some of the resources that I'm going to talk about today, one being some food safety trainings that exist for our produce growers. I'll talk a little bit about some fact sheets that we have, some trainings that we have, many of which are online, and then some volunteer programs that may be particularly appropriate. So the first program that I want to talk about is our Enhancing the Safety of Locally Grown Produce program. And we have a couple of ways that we deliver the program. And before I go into that, I just want to talk briefly about what this program covers. So it covers food safety on the farm and land use and water use and manure and soil amendments and hygiene and health and toilet and hand washing facilities, covers harvesting and storage, talks about how you can best transport produce, some various training and certification options that are out there. And then it also covers, because it was primarily designed for farmers who are selling at a farmer's market. So knowing that many of the farmers who might be trying to sell produce in their local school system, they might also have presence at a local farmer's market. So it covers some of the best practices there. And then we also talk a little bit about some current events in produce safety and some additional resources that might be helpful to our farmers. Just as an example, one of the ways that we deliver this program is through fact sheets. So we have got a couple of different fact sheets that are available for download. And I'm going to put that link in the chat as well for those who are here online. And so these are meant for anyone to be able to download and sort of work through and see where their farm might be at in terms of some of the best practices that we recommend. We also offer this program online. And so knowing that we are all pulled in so many different directions, we have moved this class online. And so anyone can go online and register and can work through all of the topics that I've just shared at their own pace. One of the things that I also want to highlight about this program is if you are a farmer who completes the program, you'll also receive a certificate documenting that you have successfully completed this program. So the program that I just mentioned, the Enhancing the Safety of Locally Grown Produce program, that one is really designed for our very small farms. If you're working on a larger farm, if you're managing a larger farm, you might be covered under something called the produce safety rule. We do in Virginia Cooperative Extension offers the Produce Safety Alliance's grower trainings, which is a required training for farms that are covered. And if anyone is interested in learning how they can sign up for a Produce Safety Alliance grower training, then you'll want to contact Dr. Laura Strawn at lstrawn@vt.edu. Something else that could be particularly useful for you is to participate in an on-farm readiness review. And I think Amber talked a little bit about this as well, of having somebody actually come out and visit you on your farm. This is something that's meant to help you get ready for complying with the produce safety rule, or if there's anything else that you might have to comply with that we're able to support you on, that an agent can come out and sort of talk you through, well, you might need to work on this, or you're doing this really well. Something else that might be useful, especially for our farmers, is so when we have farmers who participate in a lot of our produce safety trainings, the person who's participating is maybe a manager on the farm or the owner of the farm, but typically they're not the only person working on that farm. And so we also have some training programs developed by Stuart here that is applicable to the individuals who are also working on the farm. So any other employees who are there, and covering some of the best practices related to growing, harvesting, and handling produce in the field and in the packing house. And that is also something that is available online. And I've got the link right here for anyone who might be interested in signing up for that. So another way that we're able to support a lot of our growers in Virginia is when they want to maybe take it to the next step of their business and not only grow food, but maybe they want to produce value-added products. Maybe they want to prepare jams and jellies, or maybe they want to ferment what they're growing and sell that. We have a number of fact sheets that are available through our Enhancing the Safety of Locally Prepared Foods series, and those fact sheets can be found here on this site. And they are designed to walk through a potential processor, some of the basic steps that they'll need to consider to prepare some of these products. But then also you'll see here, we have some fact sheets that are covering, what if you want to give out samples, or what do you need to know in order to properly label the products that you make? And again, just some examples of what these fact sheets will look like. So again, just trying to give some of the basic information of, in the case of honey here, what actually is honey in terms of wanting to process it and sell it, and what do you need to do in order to do that safely? And again, just some other examples of the fact sheets that we have and the various topics that they cover. If you are ever in a position where you want to prepare some kind of value-added product and perhaps get that into a local school system, one of the first stops that I would recommend is our Virginia Food Producer Technical Assistance Network. And it is led by Melissa Wright. And she works with our Virginia food businesses to provide testing of the foods that they're preparing for both safety and quality. And she's able to provide guidance on the formulation of that product, or if it needs to be reformulated in order to meet some safety standard, and just overall design of the product. She's also able to help review labels to make sure that they're conveying all the information that they need to convey. And she also can help with creating nutrition facts panels. Some other things that the Virginia Food Producer Technical Assistance Network is able to assist with is trainings related to the Food Safety Modernization Act, and can help any of the food businesses that reach out navigate potential state and federal regulatory issues. She's also able to support processing of acidified foods, and can also help navigate sort of documenting the scientific rationale behind any sort of food regulations, or helping food businesses to support food businesses and their formulations using a science-based perspective. So something else, and this one might be particularly appropriate for our school systems, is Virginia Cooperative Extension is able to support individuals who need to earn the Certified Food Protection Manager certification. So there are a number of programs that meet this requirement. Within Virginia Cooperative Extension, we deliver the ServSafe program, specifically the ServSafe Certified Food Protection Manager program. Anyone who wants to sign up for that program can see what our currently available classes are at the link that I've just put in the chat. We also have the capacity to deliver these programs in Spanish. And so what I would say to anyone interested in participating in this program is to, one, see if there's a class near you that you can sign up for. And if there isn't, then I would go back to my first thing as part of my presentation is contact your local extension office and see if there are enough of you within your school system to want to take this course or need to take this course. Maybe you can organize something specifically for your school system, or they might be aware of a nearby agent that you might be able to partner with too. So depending on where you are in Virginia, you may be raising and processing or wanting to procure seafood. So one of the programs that we're able to deliver through Virginia Cooperative Extension, this is led by Dr. Catherine Parga, is obtaining the seafood HACCP certification. And so what she's able to offer is a multi-day seafood HACCP class. As far as I'm aware, there's one coming up in September of this year. And this will meet the requirements for somebody to have to go through that training in order to safely raise and process seafood products. Catherine also works with individuals who are raising meat and poultry or siluriforms, catfish, and so can also help anybody navigate the regulatory requirements to process and sell those products. All right, so getting into just some of the volunteer programs that I mentioned. The first one would be our Virginia Cooperative Extension Master Gardeners. And so these are volunteers that are trained by Extension to deliver gardening-related programming. And there are chapters of Master Gardeners all across the Commonwealth. Why I wanted to bring up these gardeners is something that I have heard is that while a farmer or a grower can do everything they can to sell what they grow, sometimes they can't sell everything. And so you might be able to partner with your local master gardeners to come and actually glean some of that produce and to distribute it to local food pantries. Another opportunity for potential partnership is looking more on the school side. And so maybe a school system could partner with local master gardeners and do some gardening related education. So again, this is a suggestion of reach out to your local extension office and see if there are any master gardeners that you might be able to partner with. And then lastly, I wanted to talk just briefly about our master food volunteers. And so these are volunteers who are trained to deliver food demonstrations and other health related programs. And this could be really great in school. So let's say you do have a school garden, or you might be working with a local farmer to bring in some fresh produce. You might be able to work with a master food volunteer to use some of that produce as part of a demonstration with any students in the school. So just another volunteer program to maybe keep in mind. And that covers a lot of the resources that I want to talk about. And I just wanted to thank you all again for the opportunity to present.
Yeah, so with that, thank you, Amber and Lester. And wondering if anyone on the call does have any questions, or if Amber has a question for Lester or vice versa. I don't think there are any in the chat. I think those were links to different resources.
I did want to just add one thing. I covered a lot of the resources that are supported through our Department of Food Science and Technology, but that is by no means all of the resources that are available. And there, a lot of the ones that I talked about are really safety focused, but something that Stuart, Amber, and I talked about as we were working on this presentation is that there's also a beef quality assurance program. And so again, I just really want to highlight, connect with your local extension agent, and they will be able to open the door to a lot of different programs.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that and the emphasis on connecting with your local extension agent. If you are an extension agent and you're watching this, connect with the extension agents around you. Especially with something as broad as food safety, you can see today that there are a variety of different topics, and we have just a number of different specialists on the call, obviously with Amber and Lester, but throughout Virginia Cooperative Extension. But there are a number of agents who are doing various different things and various different programs. So as well as reaching out if you're not an agent, but if you are an agent, make sure you know of all the different programs that are going on throughout the state.
And we just had a question about if someone wanted to connect with their local agent, how would they do that or find them? And I've posted the link. This gives you every single county in the Commonwealth, so you can just click on that and it should list who the agents are that are within that office. If you cannot find a specific person, that you're trying to find, or we also have our specialists. So I can also look for that and post that as well.
Yeah, and I would encourage you if you reach out to your local agent, and they will be able to direct you. So whatever county you're in, reach out to that agent, and whatever question you might have, we'll be able to connect you with another agent or a specialist to get your question answered.
B, can you clarify what you mean about the farm to school food safety resource?
I was just curious about what food safety, if you could just highlight what food safety resources you included in the toolkit. If the one that you presented on, that's included in the toolkit, correct?
Yes. So chapter 4 with the food safety, we have a whole bunch of resources that are listed at the end of that chapter, and that does include some of the resources that I mentioned in there. And but I also encourage you to go online and look at the VCE public website, which was what I posted initially. Let me post it again. So that's at this site here, ext.vt.edu / that will give you a list of, if you go under the publications page, you can search by topic and you can typically find things. You can also search by authors. So if you put Lester in there, you would find a lot of the pubs that he's done. If you put myself in there or Stuart, you could also find the pubs that we've done, or if there's another author that you're looking for. But yes, you can find all those online.
So I have a quick question. So the toolkit is available online through the link that you just put in?
Okay. B, do you actually have that link handy? So B, we should mention, if B, I'll put you on the spot here. B Thorpe is the farm to school specialist for the state. So she is a great person to reach out to as well, because she heads up all the farm to school efforts plus a lot else. So great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
We have the toolkit listed on the farm to school website, and I just put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just say for those of you watching this recording in the future, all of the links that have been put in the chat, those will be in the description of this video below the video that you're watching. And so we'll make sure those are all in there and hyperlinked to the different resources that we've spoken about.
Thank you.
We'd just like to thank you again to our panelists for providing their insights today. And their contact information was, I left it on the screen there for a little while. So if you want to reach out to them, please go ahead and do that. And yeah, thanks for joining us. And we encourage you to check out this entire webinar series. This is one webinar in a large series that's looking at every single chapter of the toolkit. Today was focusing on food safety, but we have a number that are still coming up. And so the schedule for all of that, again, will be in the description box for this video. So go ahead and click on that to look at what are the upcoming webinars and to see the recordings for those. And we just thank you and appreciate your time today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.